We're going to talk about this week's recalibration forecast. In particular, this is in between the eclipse season. On the 28th of August, we're going to have an eclipse that is a lunar eclipse in the sign of Pisces. And this is not about new beginnings, this particular eclipse season. This is about the releasing of things, the releasing of relationships, the releasing of these old narratives, the releasing of a pattern that maybe you didn't recognize until right now, where it brought you all the way back to maybe something that happened in your childhood. And so I'm going to give you an example of something that I've just been able to kind of pull and put the pieces together and realize that there was a connection there. And so are you feeling that? Are you feeling like there are some relationships, maybe they're in your family, that are feeling really strained? They're feeling like they're distant. Maybe it's a relationship with your significant other that all of a sudden it's, you thought that you were in alignment, you're not really in alignment. Or maybe vice versa, where you weren't really in alignment. Now all of a sudden, both of you are doing some inner work and you're coming together. Maybe you're recognizing that there's some things that you held accountable to another person or your partner, when in turn you're really projecting some things on of yourself onto others. So I had a very interesting kind of a massive insight actually that happened to me, and maybe you can relate. And I recently took my son to college, and he was, he's just set up for success. He's in an apartment with a couple of buddies, and I realized that I had a tremendous amount of anxiety, and that anxiety was kind of happening throughout the week. It was happening maybe a couple weeks before we left. And it got to the point where that anxiety interrupted my sleep. And it was that I was creating these worst case scenarios, or questioning myself. Did I do this? Did I not do that? Did I forget this thing? Do we have the drill? Do we have, oh my gosh, what if I forgot this? Or once, we got him there, then the drive home was, oh, I forgot to tell him this, I forgot to tell him that. And I just felt this level of anxiety that I'm not used to. It's not really in my cadence. It's really not in my personality. It felt very uncharacteristic of me to have this significant anxiety, this angst. And my meditations, even though I did more meditations, I was not able to get quiet. And my meditations were really more surfacey. They did not go deep. And so I was thinking to myself, well, what's really going on? What is happening? And it was through a conversation that I had with a dear friend last week that triggered something, and I was able to connect the dots. And that was, when I was very young, my parents moved in the middle of our elementary school year. And my little brother was he was in kindergarten, and I was in 4th grade. And I remember being told by my parents to make sure that I was taking care of my younger brother, because he may have problems adjusting. And I took that very, very seriously as a child. And there was not the ability, my teacher at the time did not allow me to go see my brother when I felt some anxiety come up. And that anxiety turned into, as a child, me having a lot of stomach problems. And so I would end up going to the nurse on a regular basis, because I wound myself up on the inside so much, because I was worried about my brother, who, by the way, was completely fine. But I didn't have time to adjust to the new school. Instead, it caused the kids to start to make fun of me, right? So I'm going to get vulnerable here. And that created some wounds that I thought that I healed, but it was only in talking with a dear friend last week where we were talking about childhood things that happened to us. I said, yeah, I didn't have the best childhood. I was teased a lot when I was younger, and kids weren't that nice to me when I had moved into a new school district. And all of a sudden, when I realized that there was this connection of when I was a young child in fourth grade, trying to navigate a new school, feeling responsible for my younger brother, who I could not do the job that I was told to do to take care of him. And when I couldn't see him to make sure he was okay, I started to get a lot of physical issues. And that same pattern showed up with my son. How amazing is that? That I was able to put those two pieces together. And as soon as I realized that there was a link between those two, I was able to let go. And part of that letting go was emotional. And the other part was that my higher self, the loving mother self within me, was able to go back to my child self and say, it's okay. You're safe. And in that, I was also able to release the constriction that I had around my son, and maybe I wasn't doing enough for his safety. You see how that was connected? Truly, truly profound. I was like, okay, this is a really juicy insight. And through that, I may not be conscious of other things that may be attached to that story and that particular thread of consciousness that was in my present moment that was attached to the past. But I know through me having the courage to putting those two together, I'm sure without a doubt that it released. That whole entire, whatever that was, that construct, it just disappeared. And so, although I didn't necessarily have any childhood feelings of loss or of wounds, clearly there was things there because it was showing up in my present moment. So I wanted to share that with you because in my clearing, I'm hoping that that will do some clearing for you, things that you may not put the dots together, but there are lots of dots for us. And even though we may have done a lot of work on ourselves in regards to some wounds that may have been more apparent in our lives, maybe some things that are happening in our present moment are triggering old memories that are hidden way in the recesses of our consciousness. So is it time for you, because it certainly was for me, to ask the question in our current state of being, if it's not in joy, peace, unity, compassion, what's happening? Why am I having anxiety? Why am I feeling this way? Why am I projecting my anger onto others? Why am I not able to sleep because I'm getting up in the middle of the night with some anxiety? These are the experiences that we can have that will help clear the old wounds. I call them sacred wounds. And so I hope that this is helpful for you in the entirety of what this is recalibration. When we can find the courage to see where those patterns exist in our lives that no longer serve us, we actually recalibrate. We recalibrate at a physiological level, a cellular level. It's a biological level. And that clearing of those old wounds that sit as emotional dis-eases, right, within our physical body, it allows the body to recalibrate. And that recalibration will open the door for new DNA strands to become activated. Because all of our gifts and abilities that we don't have access to are just lying dormant within us. And when we have the courage to be able to find the things that have kept us maybe even subtly kept us contained, within a construct called fear or anxiety or depression or even resentment, even frustration, even anger. See, these kinds of things are sitting there at the surface, and it's through us being able to pull that out from the recesses of our mind that allows for that freedom, that sovereignty. And so this work that we do on ourselves is what fuels humanity into the next expression of consciousness, into that fifth dimensional or fourth dimensional or sixth dimensional or beyond consciousness. Consciousness is not out there somewhere. Our ascension isn't out there somewhere. Our ascension is within. And when we are moving in that direction of freeing ourselves from the chains of our past, we automatically release. And what has been lying dormant all of a sudden comes to the surface. So I invite you to take that and find a way for you to do it on your own. Find the courage. And I say that, I'm repeating myself a lot, and I don't mean to, but it does take a lot of courage. It's so much easier to just say, I don't want to deal with it. Not now. I don't have time. If I bring it up, I'm not going to be able to function. I've got too many responsibilities. But I'm going to tell you, when you do bring it to the surface, it will actually dissipate so much quicker than you can imagine. And you don't have to go through years and years and years of potentially psychoanalytical work. If you just bring it up and say, it just doesn't serve me anymore, I'm going to let it go. And I'm going to do maybe an emotional cleanse or some other cleanse or even a fire cleanse, or even if you decide to write it out and then, in a fire, even in a candle, blow the candle out. You're releasing what no longer serves you. So I hope that's helpful. And let me know the experiences that you have in the comments section below. And if you think someone can benefit from this, please pass it along. I really appreciate the thumbs up. Thank you so much. And thanks for your support. And good luck today, okay? You're going to be great.